So teaching the Bible, I've said I've been trying to frame things lately in terms other than teaching the Bible. That framing and that mindset implies that there is some static, propositionally reductive repository of dogma toward which the words of Scripture are pointing, I guess is what I was trying to say there, and that we are to interface with Scripture in an attempt to recreate that static, propositionally reductive repository. You understand what I'm saying? Like if Scripture is trying to teach something, then the something that it's trying to teach is the truth. And the Scripture, if the Scripture isn't, if it's doing something other than saying things, if it's teaching something beyond what it says, then whatever the thing is that it's teaching is the truth, and the Scripture isn't it. You understand how it separates into two different things there? And so then the goal would make the repository more authoritative than the Scripture. And since we don't have agreed access to that repository, this approach can only result in factionalism, neoteny. Neoteny is maintaining immature characteristics beyond the time that you should into maturity, like carrying your baby teeth into adulthood or something like that. Neoteny, factionalism, and left brain hemisphere dominance, among other negative consequences. What we do is share perspectives, cultivate insights, encourage participation, and I got a lot of typos in here, and hopefully cultivate wisdom. The Bible isn't the gateway to a propositionally reductive repository of moralistic dogmatic truth claims, which is what this approach is. It thinks that the Bible is a gateway to propositionally reductive repository of moralistic dogmatic truth claims. And anybody who has a statement of faith or subscribes to systematic theology, that's how they see things. The Bible is a provocation for you to become your future self, your transformed future self. Now, he replied back, and I haven't replied to this one yet. So he replies back and he says, I appreciate the response. That gives a lot of insight. Probably non-related, but I want to know if you still feel that the core foundational truths of Christianity are what you believe to actually be true and hold to, while allowing room for other perspectives and interpretation concerning secondary issues. Now, there's so much problem with this. First of all, my hesitation to answer this question as it's framed, and I wanted to do a whole video on this, gets perceived as me dodging. Oh, he's dodging. And that's not what's going on at all. What you're used to is a kind of Christianity that is going around scratching a certainty itch. And so certainty in the audience means you need explanatory power on the stage. So churches market themselves by their explanatory power. I have the answers. You have questions, I have answers. What a match made in heaven. I'm the theologian, come to me. And I don't think that's what we should be doing. So when I hesitate to answer a question, it's not because I'm dodging or I don't think you'll like the answer. It's because I think asking this kind of question is the wrong kind of thing to do. It's not the right kind of thing to do. So where do we start with this? Okay, he talks, core issues and secondary issues. Where in the Bible? So first of all, this comes from a mindset that having things reduced into a bunch of truth claims that we're supposed to believe and affirm, believe in the sense of affirm, is what Christianity is. I don't think that's what Christianity is. And so this kind of question's wrong. So I gave this example the other day. I said, I went and talked to, we had two Olympian volleyball players came from here in Baton Rouge. They played at LSU, and then my wife and I play beach volleyball at a place called Mangoes, and they actually come and play at Mangoes, and they did some of their training at Mangoes. So when they made it to the Olympics, we're all super excited for them. And I got a chance to sit down and talk with them for about 10 minutes the other evening. And that was pretty exciting to me. Now, if I'm going to ask them about their volleyball journey and how do you get to play so well that you're at the Olympics, would this kind of question be appropriate? Okay. What do you think the foundational truths of volleyball are? And what are the primary, and do you still, what are the core foundational truths of volleyball that you believe to be actually true and hold to while allowing room for other perspectives and interpretation concerning secondary issues? It'd be dumb. You wouldn't ask that kind of question because volleyball is not propositionally normative. It's participatorily normative. You understand? So the question is about what do you do? The question isn't what you believe. The question is what do you do? What are you doing to become that good of a player? Okay, I don't care what they believe. The referees have all the right beliefs. They probably have better beliefs than the players, but guess what? They're not out there playing. And they probably, maybe some of them have competed at that level, but at this point they probably couldn't, or they would be. So asking somebody what they believe and separating those beliefs into core beliefs or primary beliefs and secondary beliefs is the wrong kind of thing to do. There's nobody, you never find anybody in Scripture talking about the core beliefs of Christianity and what the secondary beliefs are. That's not a thing. It's not a thing you find in Scripture. So why do we do that? Maybe about 1700 years ago, somebody named Constantine locked up a bunch of church representatives into a building somewhere and wouldn't let them come out until they produced something in writing called the Nicene Creed. And maybe, just maybe, that kicked off an era of propositionally reductive versions of Christianity, which resulted in a lot of corruption and finally reached the pinnacle of its explosion at the Protestant Reformation when it became super propositional. It's all about beliefs. It's all about beliefs that you can hold in your head and semantically disambiguate. You can have all the right beliefs and, be some kind of serial killer or something like that. And that's not what Christianity is. So when I hesitate to answer a question like this, I am lamenting the mindset that asks a question like this. This is not the kind of question that we should be asking. Our guy, I think Elijah here in the chat, he talked about knowing them by their fruits. Okay, that's a good start. That's a good start. So what's the fruit of these volleyball players? Well, the fruit is they made it to the Olympics. That's pretty good. And they won some games at the Olympics. That's pretty good. That's pretty good fruit. So if I wanted to learn how to play volleyball, they might be some good people to talk to or to get some training from or something like that. But I'm not going to ask them what their beliefs are. And so if there is a Christian who is bringing forth fruit, what does that fruit look like? Then your question is not going to be, what are your beliefs? Your question would be something like, what's your practice? What's your practice? See, in the West, we ask people what they believe. In the East, they more wisely ask people, what's your practice? What do you do? What do you do to become like the you need to become? If you're becoming more Christ-like every day, what are you doing to become more Christ-like? Are you storing beliefs in your head? And I would submit to you that the storage of beliefs in your head and the separation of them into primary and secondary issues makes you less Christ-like and works against any potential that you have to become Christ-like. So this is not the right kind of thing to do. And I'm not being critical of, who is this, Brother Dave here, okay? Brother Dave, I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think he means ill. Brother Dave is just a dime a dozen type of Christian who all think that they all think this way. We've been programmed by our society to think this way, And then our versions of Christianity are just outcroppings of that kind of society. We're propositionally normative, propositionally reductive. What are the core foundational truths of Christianity? Well, what agreement is there of those? You know, when they tried to do that, they had a Congress of Fundamentalism. George Dollar wrote a book on the history of fundamentalism. And there's another guy named Don Jasmine who does a lot of stuff on fundamentalism. And you know what they decided for fundamentalism? They started off with like 120 something core beliefs of the faith. They're like, that's too many. That's too many. We need fewer than that. So then they moved it. They're like, well, let's whittle it down. And they whittled it down. They whittled it down from 120 something down to 19, down to 14. And then now there's 5 fundamentals of the faith. And technically speaking, if you hold to those 5 fundamentals, that makes you a fundamentalist. Well, by those fundamentals, Catholics are fundamentalists, and they're not. So it's one of those things where Goodhart's law, as soon as you pick something to be a metric of measurement, it immediately starts to break down as a good metric of measurement. So what do you mean by that? Let me give you an idea. When I was in the Army, we had a PT test, and the PT test had 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups, and a 2-mile run. And you know what you wind up with? You wind up with people who can do push-ups and sit-ups and run for 2 miles, but you don't necessarily wind up with people who can go on a 25-mile ruck march in full combat gear and then fight and stress fire and hit the target. So how do we produce that, you see? So as soon as you list the metrics, what people do is they optimize for the metrics, and then everything else. See, these things things that exist need to be found in their natural environment, how they come. You've heard people say you need to eat whole foods, you need to eat clean foods, all right? The way we process foods, when we separate everything out, we take out the high fructose corn syrup, and then we put that in something else, and then we got ketchup. We've removed everything from the context in which it appears, and we've remixed it in some hyper stimulating way, which is either addictive or very tasty, and it's usually terrible for you. And then you have this is ketchup, okay? This is processed foods.